Hello, thank you for joining us today. I'm going to be doing a mid and upper back massage, and I'm going to be working on the lovely Lauren, and I'm going to go ahead and dive right in. So always when, especially when the mid back is part of my focus, I am sure to do like a pretty thorough warm up. One of my favorite ways to begin working on that area is actually for a nice stretch for the whole spine. So I'm just gonna tilt that pelvis a little bit and really encourage Lauren to let go of any exaggerated curvature of the low back. That can actually bring a lot of relief to the mid back as well. And with this stretch, I'm more pressing away than down, but it's a little of both. The one thing you need to be careful of with this is sometimes this area can be a little bit bony if you're working on a smaller person. So just being careful that I'm not hurting Lauren at all as I press down. Another reason that this is kind of a cool way to start is I can just real naturally kind of walk my way around and start doing some compressive work in the erector spinae. So when I was first starting massage, my transitions could be really awkward, and there's nothing really wrong where, like, say if I were to just kind of start doing compressions, nothing wrong with it, but there's definitely something to be said for smooth transitions, well thought out transitions that make for just a more enjoyable experience. And I am not afraid to really sink my weight in. I'm working with a nice broad surface area, and I'm not worried about, going too deep too fast. And it's kind of nice because I have so much stability with this technique. I can kind of go in to those erector spinae from different angles a little bit. And I know I'm not going to risk, hurting the spine at all. And I'm going to go ahead and work away from the spine a little bit too. And just kind of sinking this is really subtle. Really just encouraging these muscles to stretch a little bit in different directions. And I am going to just work on top of as well with my forearm. And I'm going to bring this all the way into the upper back. And I'm just going to do a little bit of compressive work to warm everything up. And really when I'm doing these warm-ups, if I were to divide my forearm by 3, I would work with at least a third of my forearm. So I'm not trying to do any sort of, more intense elbow work or yet, anyways. And before I walk over to the other side, I like to do something to just kind of tie everything in. and work towards a nice smooth transition. So I'm just gonna stretch that spine again. And this usually brings some nice relief to the hips as well, which can actually travel all the way up the back. And it is really interesting to me how, hip tightness can definitely affect tightness all the way up the back, not just the low back. I really like doing this compressive work along the erector spinae just because these muscles they tend to be really taut in general, and they're really easy to slide off of. So when you're just doing a technique where you're holding and you have a lot of control, you can be really effective. Start going in more at an angle, kind of pressing in towards the spine a little bit. You do need to be careful. You're really close to some ribs here. So as you do this compressive work, you need to be careful not to be working too far down, especially on someone that's smaller. Just working my way around the scapula and feeling for any trigger points that I can revisit later. And I'm going to go ahead and grab my oil. And if I was present and paying attention at this point, you should have a pretty good idea of what's going on from right to left. Lauren tends to kind of have quite a bit of tension on that right side, that erector spinae, so I know I'm going to spend a little bit more time on that side. And even if you only have 10 minutes to work on an area, you want to feel like it's a timeless experience for your client. So time management and just mindfulness are really great tools for a great massage. So even if I only have 5 or 10 minutes, I don't want my client to feel like I'm rushing at all. I do like to include the lats a little bit when I do mid-back work, especially if I feel like the erector spinae are tight. And it doesn't have to be anything fancy. It can literally be something as simple as this. And I like to bring a few strokes. I like to do a few really broad strokes into the neck, just to kind of tie everything together. And I'm gonna go ahead and start kind of zeroing in on my main areas of focus. I do like to bring that stroke all the way down, just to kind of cover the whole erector spinae and put a little bit of pressure on those hips, kind of help relieve some pressure in the back. And definitely just kind of throughout the massage, I'm really I'm moving towards the table and moving away from the table depending on what technique I'm using. So just really listening to my own body so that I feel comfortable as I work. And just bringing that all the way into the hips. And I am paying attention to, I'm not just pressing down, I'm actually moving these muscles towards the spine a little bit as I work my way down. And I'll go ahead and start going in with my forearm a little bit more. Sometimes when I start to do deeper work, I'll do just smaller movements, especially along the rector spinae, where it's easier to slip off of these muscles. And starting to work in the trap a little bit too. Starting to focus on these different muscles. And I'm going to go ahead and work my way around the shoulder. And at this point, I am definitely picking up on some knots, some trigger points around the scapula. I'm just starting to hold and release. It's really important to, you don't want your client to feel like you're just poking them. So when you do this trigger point, using a good bit of finesse. So, gradually sinking my weight in a little bit more and gradually releasing. I'll do a few strokes in between with my forearm, just something to give Lauren a little break and myself a little break too. This is one of the best places to do trigger point work, around the scapula. And just a nice long, slow effleurage stroke into the hips before I transition. Pretty close to the table when I'm doing this technique. And something that you can always do when, instead of using like a floating arm, you can always hook your elbow into your hip. And if you find, an area that allows you to do that, it's a really great technique for just feeling more stable. And it gives you a lot of power if you're wanting to do deep tissue. Because I am pregnant right now, I'm really careful of hunching over too much or kind of putting myself into that position. But it's a technique that I'll use when I'm not pregnant anymore. And again, just bringing that stroke all the way into the hip. It's always good when you can come at that muscle fiber from different angles, and it's really great for stretching everything out. Depending on how taut the muscles are in there, I might, if the muscles are like extremely taut, then I'll usually just use as broad a surface area as possible, because they're harder to stay on. And starting to work my way into the traps. And starting to work with my elbow a little bit more. It might look like I'm using my whole forearm, but my attention's definitely focused on the smaller part of my elbow and forearm. And trigger point can feel pretty intense around the scapula, and most people really like it, but if you're working on someone who has a lower pain tolerance, just keeping it moving sometimes is like a better way to go. Just repetition, nice smooth movements. Lauren is someone who likes deeper work, so I'm not really too worried about that. And again, just gradually sinking my weight in, gradually releasing, not losing contact in between. And at some point, I really like to do something for the rhomboids. It's not usually an area that I'll focus too much on, just because it responds so well to that work in the traps that you don't really have to take a whole lot of time for the rhomboids usually. But depending on the person and the issue. Just focusing on these. Really nice way to end this kind of work is in the levator scaps. So I usually save my thumbs for the levator scapula muscles if I'm doing this a similar routine, just because you can get so much done in the erector spinae and the upper back using the forearms and the elbows. So it's not really necessary to use the thumbs unless you want to. Just, it might feel a little bit crunchy, and that's okay. Paying attention if Lauren's starting to lift her shoulders at all. It's kind of a sign I might need to go a little bit lighter. And just ending with that upper trap. And I'd like to thank a few of our patrons. I'd like to thank Simone B, Alu Carter, and I Love Ego. Thank you guys so much for your support. I don't know what it is about this move along the spine into this upper trap that feels so good, but it's a really nice thing to include, especially at the end. And ending with Just a nice effleurage stroke, tying it all together, making nice. I would say with these effleurage strokes that are intended to be more calming, like the broader the better. And that is all for today. Thank you for joining us today. If you enjoyed today's video, you should check out our Patreon page where you'll find some exclusive content that I think you'll really enjoy. I look forward to seeing you there.